If there's one person who we can get to who might be able to provide information that could bring people to justice, you don't want them to talk
Scott,
to
I
her?
don't want
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Okay.
The credibility of this person who has
So you don't want all the information?
No. I would love all the information, and you know
Just
where
not
that
this
is. You know where that is? That's in the files that the FBI and the Justice Department
you don't think she might have something to say?
She's going to say whatever she needs to because Donald Trump has control over her freedom. So I'm sorry, what she has to say is irrelevant at this point. It's what the credibility of what she has to say is garbage. Where you can find that information is in the files that the Department of Justice, that Pam Bondi could release right now, today.
In today's video, Tara Setmayer absolutely destroys Scott Jennings in a heated debate on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. You've got Scott Jennings once again running interference for Trump, trying to brush off the Epstein scandal as some kind of hoax, and then Tara Setmayer coming in and absolutely torching him with reality. And here's the thing, this isn't just about partisan bickering. Trump and his allies spent years promising to release the Epstein files, saying the public deserved to know the truth. And yet here we are, still waiting. So let's dive in and watch how Tara Setmayer shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Scott Jennings, we just heard the clip there. Why is J.D. Vance so concerned with bullshit?
Well, I'm going to apologize to my 11-year-old who's in the green room trying to watch this show right now for our potty talk tonight.
Well, the president's potty talk, let's be fair.
Well, you've certainly
I'm so sorry for repeating the president of the United States.
Look, here's the deal. I don't know what they're going to do. I know that the dinner they were supposed to be having, they say, the vice president directly says, was not about Epstein. I don't know if they've made any decisions. I don't know what they're planning to do. I didn't know what they were planning to do last night either. Nothing has changed in the last 24 hours. And so I assume at some point they're going to have to release some information. I assume at some point the members of the Republican leadership in Congress are going to have to decide how to handle a vote when they come back in September. But we're having the same conversation tonight that we had last night, that we had Friday, that we had Thursday, that we had Wednesday, and so on and so forth. And I actually think the president has a point. It's because nobody wants to talk about the good things that are happening in the country, so we're diverting into this.
I will say, one of the reasons we're talking about it is because the Deputy Attorney General spent 2 days talking to a woman convicted of conspiring to sexually abuse minors with Jeffrey Epstein.
How many weeks ago?
He talked to her for 2 days,
Okay.
hasn't released what he talked about, and the president today called that a hoax.
Listen, I find it pretty interesting that folks are feigning outrage over how long we're talking about this because it's been a couple of weeks, self-inflicted by the president of the United States and his MAGA grifters who made podcasting careers out of demanding the Epstein files would be released. Now those people are in positions of power that they could actually release the Epstein files, and all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, it's on the desk, it's not on the desk, it's a hoax, it's not, it's Democrats' fault, but it's bullshit now. They can't get their lies straight, so that's why we're still here. And yet, the survivors who were victimized by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein have had to live with this for 30 years. 30 years. So, you know what? Too bad if it's uncomfortable for people in MAGA world and for Republicans to have to keep defending this, because the survivors of these heinous acts and of these monsters have had to endure this for decades, and they deserve justice. And unfortunately, only since the last couple of days have the survivors actually been given some agency, and their voices are beginning to be heard, where it really should be about them and justice for them, not for Donald Trump and his MAGA world trying to figure out ways to cover his behind, because they're the ones who've been lying to the American people and protecting predators.
I agree with you that the victims should be the people who we are all focused on, and everyone who perpetrated a crime here should be punished to the full extent of the law, whether they have been punished yet or not. Right? We should all be able to agree on that.
Yep.
But what I want to know is, why have House Democrats not been so insistent on this for the last 4 years? When Merrick Garland was the Attorney General and when Joe Biden was president, they suddenly got interested in it like 2 weeks ago.
No, they should have been. Unless I will confess that they should have been. And I agree. The victims should be centered. We shouldn't be protecting power for pedophiles. And it is a legitimate question to ask, where were the Democrats? This shouldn't be a partisan issue. It could be political, but it shouldn't be partisan. We should care about girls and younger women who were sexually abused, and bring all of those people, whether they're Democrats or Republicans on the list, bring them to justice. So absolutely, where were the Democrats?
Watching this exchange, I can't help but point out what always seems to get lost when people like Scott Jennings and Brad Todd try to deflect the raw facts. Survivors of Epstein and Maxwell's abuse have been waiting over 3 decades for justice, and in that time we've seen powerful men on both sides quietly benefit from keeping those files buried. Here's the thing, this shouldn't be partisan. Court records already confirmed that Trump was not just some casual acquaintance of Epstein. They were close for years, with Epstein attending Trump's parties, showing up at Mar-a-Lago, and even appearing in that infamous 1992 tape where Trump and Epstein are ogling young women together. Trump himself once admitted Epstein liked girls on the younger side. That's not a rumor, that's his own words. And it's not just about Trump. The Epstein case revealed a pattern of powerful elites getting protection, from cushy plea deals in Florida to the DOJ dragging its feet on transparency. The MAGA crowd promised their supporters accountability and full release of the files. Now that Trump's name is right there in the middle of it, suddenly it's a hoax and old news. That hypocrisy is staggering. At the end of the day, Tara's right to call this out. Survivors don't need excuses, political spins, or delay. They need accountability. And the fact that Republicans, especially Trump allies, are trying to rewrite the narrative only proves that sunlight is the last thing they want on this scandal.
I think the sticking point here is that the Epstein files, Jeffrey Epstein, all of this was made a core piece of mythology from the right. That's right. A core piece of mythology, one of the most solid books in their Bible, because it was an example of the depth of the deep state, how much we had been taken over by bureaucracy, how much that bureaucracy was covering up for rich and powerful people. And Donald Trump and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and all those people were supposed to come in and take a sledgehammer to that. And they don't want to do it. And no amount of obfuscating, no amount of distraction is going to change the fact that they don't want to do it. And the answer is why. To be honest with you, the Democrats and everybody, culturally, we turned our eye away from this. It's definitely true. It's true. But, you know, just to be real with you, it's becoming more of a thing because of the hesitancy to deal with it. You're starting to wonder, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, talk to me more about that, because I'm not, to the extent that the Epstein situation wasn't in the mainstream before, Van, do you think it's more in the mainstream now?
When I was on TMZ and Epstein passed away, I actually got in trouble because I said it was the most bipartisan accomplishment that Washington had had in a generation, right? He had his hands in everything. Everyone was around. I saw a picture of him from the Times with him and Fidel Castro. They're laughing, having fun. Like, what's going on? People are now starting to concoct and invent scenarios about the depth of this because the government is obviously not keeping it straight with the people. And at a certain point, you know, the president can say whatever he wants to say, but I think he's reached the limit of how much his supporters are going to take from him without holding him accountable.
Can I ask you, Brad, one thing? You said you want to punish everyone to the full extent of the law. Does that include Ghislaine Maxwell, who just got this highly mysterious move to a literal prison camp in Texas, which is way cushier by all accounts? You know, a country club I read, you know, like Atmosphere in one of the papers, you have to get super high approval to get moved there. Is that being punished to the full extent of the law?
There's we can't release a lot of things because courts won't let them. Like grand jury testimony cannot be released. They've asked the courts to do that. They can't do it. So what's the next best thing? Talk to somebody, even someone who's culpable, and Ghislaine Maxwell is definitely culpable. See if she will divulge details that we don't know that we could make public. If they have to move her from prison A to prison B to get her to talk, to release more details, I'm okay with that.
What makes this whole conversation so wild is how the right built the Epstein story into one of their biggest deep state talking points. And now that they're in power, they're stonewalling on the very transparency they promised. If the point was to drain the swamp and expose elite predators, why haven't they done it? Why haven't they released the files? And there's a deeper layer here that nobody on the right seems to address: the preferential treatment of Maxwell. This isn't a conspiracy, it's documented. She was quietly moved to a minimum security camp in Texas that's been described as cushy and country club-like. That kind of transfer requires high-level approval and is typically reserved for non-violent offenders with spotless records, not someone convicted of trafficking minors. If this was really about justice for victims, Maxwell would be under far tighter restrictions, not given conditions that look more like a reward than a punishment. On top of that, the files themselves aren't classified nuclear secrets. Much of what's being held back is grand jury testimony, which courts can authorize for release under public interest exceptions. The DOJ under Trump never pushed for that authorization. If anything, they used procedural excuses to drag their feet. That's a choice, and it's a choice that protects powerful people. This is exactly why the left's frustration resonates. For decades, survivors have had to watch politicians use their trauma as a talking point while quietly shielding predators. And now when MAGA Republicans have the power to release the files, they're suddenly silent. That silence is louder than any deep state conspiracy.
Yeah,
Listen, this is outrageous. Well, first of all, just to reemphasize how outrageous it is that she was moved from a medium security prison to a prison camp. I worked on commutations and pardons when I was a congressional staffer. I've actually been to these types of facilities. And I can tell you, when I was advocating for Border Patrol agents who were unjustly prosecuted and facing 11 and 12 years in prison, they were not a threat. They were not going to abscond. And trying to get them moved closer to their family to a prison camp required virtually an act of the president. The Bureau of Prisons was not trying to do it. It didn't matter. So this was something that was clearly done as a favor. Why is the president of the United States and this administration doing favors for a convicted child sex trafficker? That is the answer. That should be asked every single day. He cannot.
Is he doing it so that? Are they doing it so that perhaps she will give more information?
She's had plenty of opportunity to do that. She's also been convicted of perjury. She's going to say and do whatever she needs to.
She was never convicted of perjury. Two things. One, the prosecutor said that she committed perjury. They didn't go and prosecute her for that. And for what it's worth, the president says he didn't know. He didn't know anything about her.
Please, give me a break. He knows how much paint is being painted in the White House. You're telling me he doesn't know what's going on with someone like this who he's known for decades? That's bullshit.
So we have lots of speeches about how we got to protect the victims. If there's one person who we can get to who might be able to provide information that could bring people to justice, you don't want them to talk to her?
I don't want them. Wait a minute. Hold on. Okay. The credibility of this person who has
so you don't want all the information?
No. I would love all the information. And you know where that is? You know where that is? That's in the files that the FBI and the Justice Department
You don't think she might have something to say?
She's going to say whatever she needs to because Donald Trump has control over her freedom. So I'm sorry, what she has to say is irrelevant at this point. It's what the credibility of what she has to say is garbage. Where you can find that information is in the files that the Department of Justice, that Pam Bondi could release right now, today. It has nothing to do with the courts.
Are you aware of what the victims themselves say in regards to how they feel about Maxwell's release or pardon in a conversation?
No, it's a release or pardon.
What they
I don't want her pardon.
But listen, what they have talked about is the very direct ways that Maxwell victimized them.
Correct.
And
that's why she's in jail.
She's a criminal.
Rewarded for that?
Right? So what I'm saying right now
she should be
is
talked to and mined for information.
Rather than,
that's the argument.
Rather than add something onto it and introduce a new component into it, release what we have.
Correct.
Release what we have so that people can see it and make their own minds up about what's untoward, what's criminal, or what's not. Bringing her in so that she can parrot what people want her to say and then rewarding her for abusing young women for decades is ridiculous.
It's untenable.
Yeah.
And big ups to people like Representative Rokana, Rep. Massey, and Rep. Summer Lee. At least they're continuing to push this issue. All of America should be outraged by this.
What Tara's pointing out is really important because the outrage here isn't just about Maxwell, it's about the system bending over backwards for someone convicted of child sex trafficking. And let's be real, the idea that Maxwell is suddenly going to spill secrets after decades of silence is laughable. She's had every chance to talk. What actually matters are the files, the hard evidence that the DOJ is still sitting on. That's where the truth is. And let's not forget the double standard at play. Everyday people, even non-violent offenders, struggle to get moved closer to their families or into less restrictive facilities. I've seen reporting on mothers serving long sentences for minor drug offenses who couldn't even get transferred despite spotless records. Yet Maxwell gets cushy treatment in a Texas camp? That screams of favoritism and connections, not justice. On top of that, victims themselves have been crystal clear. They want transparency, not backroom deals. They've called for the Epstein files to be released so the world can see who enabled and protected these predators for decades. Protecting victims means amplifying their voices and exposing the powerful people who looked the other way. Until that happens, every move like this only deepens the suspicion that those in charge are more interested in shielding the elite than delivering justice. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.